A murmur rose through the chamber. The Lurathi delegate leaned forward, eyes wide. The Zentari began running rapid calculations, their crystalline faces flickering with light. Even Vexilorn was silent. "We do not want your empire," Ruiz continued. "We do not want your rules. We want your respect. And we offer partnership, not as subjects but as equals." She then announced the formation of a new alliance, the Pact of Equals. Any species could join, no oaths of loyalty, no forced contributions. Just shared knowledge, mutual defense, and one simple rule: no one speaks for another without their consent. The offer stunned the galaxy. For centuries, the Concord had held power by offering protection in exchange for obedience. Humanity offered something different: freedom with responsibility, strength with humility, and the proof was already in the data flowing through every screen. In the days that followed, delegations stayed aboard Horizon Station, not to negotiate, but to learn. Lurathi scientists worked alongside human engineers to adapt fusion cores for their ocean cities. Zentari logicians helped refine Chimera's code to remove bias. Even Krell technicians, wary at first, studied human shield harmonics and admitted quietly that they were more efficient than their own. On Mars, Kyle Briggs received a message from a Lurathi engineer thanking him for the shield designs he'd shared online. On New Carthage, Lisa Monroe taught a group of young Zentari how to grow crops in thin soil using human bioaugments. And on Titan, Zoe Ramirez flew a joint patrol with a Lurathi scout, their ships moving in silent harmony through the rings of Saturn. Back on Earth, children watched the broadcasts in schoolrooms. They saw their species not as outcasts but as builders, not as fighters but as friends. The fear that had gripped the colonies for months began to fade, replaced by something warmer: hope. Vexilorn did not join the pact. He returned to Viridia with his delegation, his silence louder than any speech. But others did. Dozens of species, small, overlooked, tired of being told what to do, signed on within weeks. The Concord did not collapse, but it shrank, and its voice grew quieter. Daniel Shaw stood once more on the observation deck of Horizon Station, watching a Lurathi ship drift gently away. Its hull now fitted with a human-made oxygen recto used them for life, not control. Weichler. Beside him, Lena Cho handed him a cup of coffee. "They thought we'd break," she said softly. He shook his head. "They didn't know us." Below them, Earth turned in the distance, blue, fragile, alive. Not a planet of soldiers, but of teachers, farmers, builders, dreamers. A species that had been pushed to the edge and chose not to fall, but to reach out instead. Peace, Daniel realized, was never given. It was built, brick by brick, hand by hand, and humanity had just laid the first stone of a new kind. In a garage on Mars, Kyle Briggs powered down his welding torch and looked up at the stars. On a hill in New Carthage, Lisa Monroe watched her students plant seeds in newly enriched soil. And in a quiet room on Earth, President Ruiz closed her eyes for the first time in months and let herself breathe. The stars still burned cold, but for the first time in a long while they felt close, square. She played the recording of the Free Fleet's message over a public speaker. When it ended, a farmer named Derek Cole stepped forward. "So what do we do now?" Lisa looked at the faces around her. Young, old, scared, but steady. "We keep watching. We keep ready. And we trust that Earth knows what it's doing." Back on the Free Star, Paul Greer reviewed the mission logs. It had gone perfectly. Chimera's predictions were flawless. The EMP pulse had hit exactly when and where it was supposed to. No lives lost, no ships destroyed. Just a demonstration. He allowed himself a small smile. The Concord thought humanity was chaotic, unpredictable. But Greer knew the truth. Humans weren't chaotic. They were adaptable. And when pushed too far, they became something the galaxy had never seen before. Calm, clever, and utterly unstoppable. The Aurora Dawn would not be forgotten. But it would not be the end. It was the spark, and now the fire was spreading. Part 4. The Concord was used to war. They had fought the Zenth Swarm, crushed the Vorn Rebellion, and contained a dozen border conflicts with cold precision, but they had never faced anything like humanity's quiet war. There were no grand battles, no declarations, no fleets clashing in fiery ruin. Instead, human resistance came in whispers. Sudden blackouts in patrol comms, supply routes that mysteriously shifted, sensor ghosts that appeared and vanished without a trace. It was like fighting smoke. After the Nadir Crossroads incident, the Concord doubled its patrols. They sent hunter-killer squads into human-claimed space. They tightened blockades around Earth's colonies. But every move they made seemed to be anticipated. A Krell frigate would arrive at a checkpoint only to find it abandoned. A surveillance drone would power up and immediately lose signal. Ships that should have been easy targets slipped through their nets like water through fingers. The truth was simple. Humanity wasn't hiding. They were thinking. On Luna, Dr. Nora Finch barely left her lab. Project Chimera had grown beyond predictions. It now linked civilian traffic logs, weather patterns on colony worlds, even public news feeds to build a living map of conquered behavior. The AI didn't just guess where enemy ships would go. It understood why. And it told human commanders exactly when and where to act. In the asteroid belt, Derek Cole, once a simple factory worker, now led a team that reprogrammed old mining bots into silent scouts. These bots drifted among the rocks, watching, listening, sending back data through encrypted laser pulses. One bot, nicknamed Whisper, spotted a Concord listening post hidden inside a hollowed-out comet. Within hours, a human drone planted a soft EMP charge that fried its sensors without destroying the structure. The message was clear. We know where you are. We could hurt you. We choose not to. On Titan, Zoe Ramirez flew deeper than ever before. Her small scout ship, the Wren, hugged the edge of a gas giant's radiation belt, invisible to standard scans. She watched a Concord carrier group refuel at a remote station. For 2 days, she logged every shift change, every maintenance cycle, every blind spot in their rotation. Then she sent the data home and vanished back into the dark. No shots fired. No trace left behind. Just knowledge delivered like a gift. The Concord began to fracture. The Lurathi, amphibious and peace-loving, questioned why they were policing a species that hadn't attacked anyone. The Zintari, logical and data-driven, pointed out that human actions showed restraint, not aggression. Even some Krell commanders grew uneasy. Why would a species capable of disabling an entire fleet choose to spare it? Vexilorn tried to hold the alliance together. He gave speeches about order, about the danger of human unpredictability, but his words rang hollow. The galaxy was starting to see humanity not as reckless but as disciplined, not as violent but as precise, and that was far more frightening. On Earth, President Elena Ruiz made no public appearances. She didn't need to. Her people understood. In cities and farms, in domes on Mars and labs on Europa, humans worked with quiet purpose. Teenagers built signal jammers in school workshops. Retired engineers designed better shield harmonics in their basements. Nurses trained in battlefield triage during lunch breaks. No one was forced. No one was ordered. They simply chose to be ready. Then came the broadcast. It started as a glitch in the Concord's main comms relay near Viridia. For 3 seconds, every screen in the network flickered. Then, clear as daylight, footage of the Aurora Dawn played, uncut, unedited. The sudden attack. The lack of warning. The patrol ships leaving without checking for survivors. The video ended with a single line of text. This is what you call peace. The footage spread faster than the Concord could contain it. Within hours, it was playing in marketplaces on Lurathi homeworlds, in Zintari learning halls, even in Krell worker communes. Species that had never questioned the Concord before now asked, why did they let this happen? Why did they cover it up? Vexilorn called an emergency session. He blamed human hackers. He claimed the video was faked. But the telemetry data matched official logs. The truth was undeniable. On New Carthage, Lisa Monroe stood on a hill overlooking the colony. Below, farmers and miners trained with repurposed tools. Laser cutters set to stun, exosuits fitted with shield emitters. They weren't soldiers, but they were ready to defend their homes. A young boy ran up to her holding a small device. I made a motion tracker from my toy drone, he said, eyes bright. Lisa smiled and ruffled his hair. Good work, she said. Keep it hidden. Back on the Free Star, Admiral Paul Greer received new orders. Not to attack, not to destroy, but to show presence. His fleet, now a mix of refitted freighters, retrofitted liners, and sleek new scouts, drifted near key Concord routes just out of weapons range. They didn't fire. They just appeared, watched, then disappeared. Each sighting chipped away at the Concord's confidence. How many ships did humanity really have? Where were they coming from? Why did they always seem one step ahead? The answer, of course, was everywhere. Humanity wasn't relying on a single navy. They had turned their entire civilization into a shield. Every ship, every station, every person played a part. They weren't just fighting a war. They were living it, calmly, carefully, with eyes wide open. And the Concorde, for the first time in centuries, felt afraid. Not of weapons, not of numbers, but of something far worse. A species that refused to play by the old rules. A species that chose mercy over rage, cleverness over brute force, unity over fear. The galaxy had expected chaos. Instead, they found clarity. As stars burned cold and silent above human space, the message spread without words. We are not your enemy. But we will not be your victims. And if you push us again, we will not hold back. The reckoning was not coming. It was already here. Part 5. The Concorde did not surrender. They did not beg. But they did something almost as rare. They asked to talk. A message arrived at Earth's orbital relay station, signed by 7 major member species, including the Lorathi and the Zintari. They requested peace talks. Not on Viridia, not under conquered law, but on neutral ground, chosen by humanity. President Elena Ruiz read the request in her quiet office. Outside, the first snow of winter dusted the hills of Geneva. She did not smile. She did not sigh in relief. She simply nodded and said, "Tell them yes." But not on their terms. On ours. The meeting place would be Titan's Horizon Station, a civilian orbital platform once used for scientific exchange, now rebuilt in secret over the past months. Humans had reinforced its hull, upgraded its life support, and installed open-band comms so every species in the galaxy could listen if they chose. There would be no hidden agendas, no closed doors, just truth spoken in the light. As the appointed day neared, ships from across the spiral arm gathered near Saturn's rings. Not warships, not this time. Diplomatic shuttles, science vessels, even a few curious merchant craft. The Lorathi came in a softly glowing barge filled with living coral. The Zintari arrived in a crystalline sphere that hummed with logic engines. Even a Krell delegation showed up, their segmented bodies tense but present. Humanity greeted them without fanfare. No soldiers lined the corridors. No weapons were visible, just men and women in simple uniforms offering water, directions, and quiet respect. Ambassador Daniel Shaw stood at the main airlock, shaking hands or tentacles or claws as each delegate arrived. He said little. He did not gloat. He simply welcomed them home. Inside the central chamber of Horizon Station, President Ruiz waited. She wore no medals, no ceremonial robes, just a dark coat and the same calm eyes that had watched the Aurora Dawn footage months before. When Vexilorn entered last, feathers ruffled and beak tight, she did not rise. She simply met his gaze. "You asked for peace," she said. "So let us speak plainly." She did not list grievances. She did not demand apologies. Instead, she activated a data stream that flooded every screen in the chamber and every connected network across known space. Schematics appeared, clean fusion reactors that could power a city for a century on a cup of water, medical nanites that healed wounds without scars, atmospheric processors that could turn dead worlds green again. "These are not weapons," Ruiz said. "They are gifts, open source, free to all who wish." With our freedom, the Conquered asked us to kneel. We chose to walk away instead. She announced no war, no retaliation, just withdrawal, complete, total, and final. All trade agreements with Concord members were suspended. All data sharing pacts terminated. All diplomatic frequencies closed. Earth would rely on itself and on its own colonies. The message was clear. We are not your enemy, but we will not be your subjects. The Conquered reacted with confusion, then anger. Patrols began shadowing human freighters near border zones. At first, they kept their distance. Then they got bolder. A cargo ship carrying medical supplies from Titan was stopped and searched without cause. Another was forced to divert course under threat of fire. Human crews reported being scanned, tracked, and sometimes hailed with demands to prove peaceful intent. But humanity did not respond with weapons. Not yet. They responded with silence and with preparation. In hidden shipyards buried beneath the ice of Europa, engineers worked around the clock. Old freighters were refitted with reinforced hulls. Passenger liners received hidden weapon mounts. Even garbage scows were fitted with emergency jump drives. No one called them warships. They were just civilian vessels with enhanced safety features. But everyone knew the truth. On Luna, Dr. Nora Finch stared at a glowing schematic on her screen. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her team was finalizing the last protocols for Project Chimera, an AI network designed to predict enemy movements by analyzing quantum fluctuations in subspace. It wasn't a weapon. It was a shield made of math and light, and if it worked, it would give humanity eyes everywhere. Meanwhile, in a quiet apartment in Buenos Aires, retired Admiral Paul Greer watched the news with a cup of cold coffee. He hadn't worn a uniform in 10 years. But when his secure line buzzed that evening, he answered on the first ring. The voice on the other end was calm, firm. "Sir, we need you." Greer didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'll be there in 12 hours." The Concorde still believed humanity was backing down. They saw the closed embassies, the halted trade, the lack of protest, and mistook it for fear. They didn't see the quiet hum of factories running double shifts. They didn't see the teenagers in Nebraska building signal jammers in their garages. They didn't see the mothers in Jakarta teaching their kids emergency codes. They thought silence meant surrender. But on Earth, silence had always meant something else. It meant focus. It meant resolve. It meant the calm before the storm. In orbit above Titan, a young pilot named Zoe Ramirez ran a final diagnostic on her scout drone. She was barely 18, but she'd logged more flight hours than most veterans. Her hands moved fast, sure. She didn't think about war. She thought about home, about her little brother, about the garden her grandmother kept on the roof, about the way the sky turned pink at sunset over the Andes. She wasn't fighting for glory. She was fighting so those things could still exist tomorrow. Back on Viridia, Vexilorn received a report. Human activity had dropped by 90% across all conquered channels. "They've gone dark," his aide said. "No signals, no requests, no complaints." Vexilorn nodded, satisfied. "Good. Let them rot in their isolation." But in the shadows of human space, something was stirring. Not rage, not recklessness, something far more dangerous. Unity, purpose, and the quiet certainty that comes when a people decide they will not be broken. The Concorde had pushed humanity to the edge. Now humanity was stepping back. Not in fear, but to gain ground. And no one in the galaxy saw what was coming next. Part 3. The freighter Aurora Dawn was not a warship. It never had been. It carried food, medicine, and spare parts for the research outpost on Ceres Station. Its crew of 12 had no weapons training. Captain Marcus Boone had spent 20 years hauling cargo across the inner system, and he prided himself on never firing a shot in anger. That changed near the Helios belt. It started with a ping on the long-range scanner. A conquered patrol, 3 sleek silver vessels from the Krell-aligned fleet, had dropped out of warp directly in the Aurora Dawn's path. No warning, no hail, just a sudden blockage in the void. Marcus opened a channel. "This is civilian vessel Aurora Dawn, registry E7742. We are on a scheduled supply run. Please adjust course, static." Then a sharp clicking voice replied in broken standard. "You are suspected of smuggling quantum core components. Power down and prepare for boarding." Marcus frowned. "We're carrying protein paste and antibiotics. Scan us if you like." "We will board," the voice said. "Do not resist." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Boarding a civilian ship without evidence was a clear violation of even basic conquered trade law. But arguing wouldn't help. He signaled his crew to stay calm. "Keep hands visible. No sudden moves." The patrol ships closed in. One fired a tether drone that latched onto the Aurora Dawn's hull. Then without another word they opened fire. Not a warning shot. Not a disabling burst. Full plasma cannons tore into the freighter's engine block. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. Oxygen hissed from a ruptured line. 2 crew members died instantly. 4 more were trapped in the aft section as bulkheads sealed automatically. Marcus, bleeding from a gash on his temple, tried to send a distress call. But the comms were dead. The patrol ships hovered nearby, scanning the wreckage. They never attempted rescue. They never even asked if survivors remained. After 10 minutes, they warped away, leaving the Aurora Dawn drifting, broken, and bleeding into the dark. The attack was recorded. A backup sensor drone launched during the chaos captured everything. The unprovoked strike, the lack of warning, the cold departure. The data packet reached Earth in under an hour. President Elena Ruiz watched the footage alone in her office. She saw Marcus Boone's last transmission cut off mid-sentence. She saw the faces of the crew, men and women who had signed up to deliver medicine, not die for it. When the screen went dark, she sat very still. Then she stood, walked to the secure comm panel and pressed a single button. Activate Silent Dawn. Across human space, lights flickered in hidden bunkers. In orbit around Mars, dormant satellites powered up. On Luna, Dr. Nora Finch's fingers flew across her console as Project Chimera came online for the first time in live conditions. The AI began mapping conquered fleet movements, predicting patrol routes, identifying weak points in their supply chains. It didn't take sides. It just saw patterns and showed humanity where to strike without being seen. On Titan, retired Admiral Paul Greer stood on the command deck of the newly commissioned Free Star, a refitted ore hauler now bristling with stealth plating and rail cannons. His crew, mostly volunteers, many with no military experience, stood at attention. Greer didn't give a speech. He just said, "We don't start fights, but we finish them." Meanwhile, on Earth, the people reacted not with riots, but with resolve. Factories that once made household goods switched to producing shield capacitors. Schools held emergency drills that included signal encryption and emergency comms. Teenager Zoe Ramirez, now officially part of the Titan Scout Corps, flew her drone deeper into contested space, mapping conquered sensor blind spots. Her hand shook only once when she thought about the Aurora Dawn's crew. Then she steadied herself. Fear was a luxury they couldn't afford. The conquered expected outrage, protests, maybe a desperate plea for justice. Instead, humanity went quieter than ever. No broadcasts, no demands, just silence and movement. 3 days after the attack, a Concorde supply armada passed through the Nadir Crossroads, a busy junction near the edge of human-claimed space. The fleet carried food, fuel, and replacement parts for a dozen member worlds. It was lightly guarded, just 2 escort frigates. Why worry? Humanity had no navy, no real weapons, no stomach for war. They were wrong. As the armada entered the narrow gravity corridor of the crossroads, every ship's engine suddenly failed. Not exploded, not damaged, just stopped. Navigation systems flickered. Comms went dark. The crews panicked, running diagnostics, rebooting cores, but nothing worked. Then, from the shadows of a nearby asteroid field, human ships emerged. Not firing, not threatening, just watching. A voice came over open channel, calm and clear. "This is the Free Fleet. Your ships are disabled, not destroyed. Your crews are unharmed. We could have killed you all. We chose not to. Remember that." The message lasted 10 seconds. Then the human ships vanished as quickly as they'd appeared. By the time conquered engineers got the engines running again, the attackers were gone, leaving behind only a single data chip floating in the void. It contained full schematics for a clean water filtration system, along with a note: "Use it wisely." The incident sent shockwaves through the Conquered. How had humanity disabled an entire fleet without firing a shot? Who were these Free Fleet ships, and why show mercy? Vexilorn demanded answers, but his own intelligence officers had none. The attack made no sense. It wasn't about territory. It wasn't about revenge. It was a message: we see you. We can stop you, and we are holding back. On New Carthage, Lisa Monroe gathered her militia in the tow. IRA Part 1-1. The sky above Viridia Station was not a sky at all. It was a dome of polished alloy and reinforced glass, curving over the chamber where the fate of humanity would be decided. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Inside, the air hummed with tension and the low murmur of alien voices. Ambassador Daniel Shaw stood alone at the center of the circular floor, his boots clicking softly against the smooth stone. He wore a simple gray suit, no medals, no insignia, just a man representing a planet that had once dreamed of belonging among the stars. Around him, seated in tiered rows that rose like petals of a metal flower, were the delegates of the Galactic Conquered, 200 species, 200 voices, and one ruling body that had kept peace across the spiral arm for 3 centuries. Most of them were not human-shaped. Some floated in nutrient-filled globes, others perched on articulated limbs, their eyes glinting like polished obsidian. At the highest point of the chamber sat Vexilorn, the High Speaker of the Conquered. Tall and feathered, with a beak sharp enough to cut steel, Vexilorn had long viewed humanity as a problem. a loud, fast-breeding, emotionally volatile species that refused to stay in its lane. Daniel kept his hands clasped behind his back. He had rehearsed his words 100 times on the shuttle ride up from Viridia's surface. But now, facing the full weight of the Concord's judgment, his throat felt dry. Representative Shaw, Vexilorn began, voice crackling through the translation field like dried leaves scraping stone. You stand before this council not as a guest but as an accused. A ripple passed through the chamber. Some delegates shifted. Others remained still as statues. The incident at the Krell border zone, Vexilorn continued, has escalated beyond acceptable limits. Your vessels opened fire without provocation. You destroyed 3 Krell mining drones and disabled a command frigate. This is not the behavior of a civilized species. Daniel took a slow breath. With respect, Speaker, the Krell were mining inside Sector Gamma 9. That sector was declared a protected human development zone under Concord Treaty 47B. We sent 3 warnings. They ignored them. When our patrol ship approached to verify compliance, they powered up weapons. We responded in self-defense. A low hiss came from the Krell delegate, a segmented creature with too many eyes and a voice like grinding gears. Lies, human lies. We were harvesting legally. Your harvest coordinates were logged inside our exclusion perimeter, Daniel said calmly. We have the telemetry. We offered to share it with the council 2 weeks ago. It was never reviewed. Vexilorn's wings flared slightly, a sign of irritation. Procedural delays do not justify aggression. Humanity has a pattern. Border disputes, resource grabs, rapid militarization. You speak of peace, yet your shipyards never sleep. Daniel didn't flinch. We build ships because we live on the edge of known space. We have no ancient alliances, no inherited fleets. We protect what we've built with our own hands. That's not aggression. That's survival. Silence fell. Heavy. Thick. Then Vexilorn stood. The chamber dimmed slightly as if the lights themselves bowed to authority. The Concord has deliberated, the speaker announced. We find humanity in violation of galactic stability protocols. Therefore, we issue the following decree. Daniel's stomach tightened. He knew this moment was coming. Earth's intelligence network had warned of it days ago. But hearing it spoken aloud was different. You will surrender all quantum core technology within 30 solar cycles. This includes research data, prototypes, and manufacturing schematics. You will dismantle your deep space defense grid along the Orion Rim, and you will accept permanent Concord observers on all human colony worlds, with full authority to inspect, restrict, or veto any military or industrial activity. A murmur rose from the human aide standing near the exit. Lena Cho, young, sharp-eyed, gripping her datapad so hard her knuckles turned white. She knew what this meant. It wasn't just oversight. It was occupation by another name. Daniel's voice stayed steady. Speaker, the Quantum Core project is civilian. It powers hospitals, water purifiers, terraforming arrays. Taking it would cripple our colonies. The technology can be weaponized, Vexilorn said flatly, and your species cannot be trusted with dual-use systems. That's not fair, Daniel said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He caught himself. Forgive me. What I mean is, it's not just. We've followed every treaty. We've contributed to Concord relief efforts. We've even taken in refugees from the Zenth War. And now you treat us like criminals for defending our own borders? Vexilorn tilted his head. Fairness is irrelevant. Stability is everything. The Concord exists to prevent chaos. And humanity is chaos. The words hung in the air like smoke. Daniel looked around the chamber. Not one delegate met his eyes. Not the gentle Larathi. Not the logical Zintari. Not even the usually sympathetic Velm. They had all agreed. This wasn't a trial. It was a sentence. He nodded slowly. I will deliver your decree to Earth. See that you do, Vexilorn said. Compliance is not optional. Failure to obey will result in full economic and military sanctions. You will be isolated. Alone. Daniel turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing in the vast room. Behind him, the chamber erupted into quiet chatter, relief, judgment, indifference. None of it mattered now. Back on the shuttle, Lena finally spoke. They think we'll just roll over. Daniel stared out the viewport at the blue-green curve of Viridia below. They don't know us. On Earth, President Elena Ruiz watched the live feed in her office deep beneath Geneva. She sat alone, the glow of the screen painting shadows on her face. When the transmission ended, she didn't move for a long time. Then she pressed a button on her desk, Get me defense, and the heads of Luna Shipworks, Mars Command, and Titan Logistics, and patch in every colony governor from Proxima to Epsilon Eridani. Her voice was quiet but firm. They gave us an ultimatum, she said to the empty room. Now they'll learn what happens when you push humanity too far. Outside, the sun set over the Alps. Somewhere in Ohio, a teenager named Zoe Ramirez finished her physics homework and looked up at the night sky, wondering why the stars suddenly felt farther away. In a garage on Mars, Kyle Briggs welded a broken thruster back together, humming an old Earth song. And on a quiet street in Chicago, retired Admiral Paul Greer poured himself a cup of coffee, unaware that his phone would ring in exactly 17 minutes with an order he'd hoped never to receive again. The Conquered thought they had tamed humanity. They were wrong. Part 2. 3 days after the Concord's ultimatum, Earth did something no one expected. It said nothing. No angry speeches. No military drills broadcast on the news. No emergency sessions at the United Earth Assembly. The planet went quiet. Too quiet. On Viridia Station, Vexilorn watched the silence with narrowed eyes. He expected protests, pleas, maybe even threats. Instead, humanity vanished from the galactic stage like a shadow at noon. Then on the morning of the 4th day, every human embassy across the Concord shut its doors. Not with drama, not with fanfare, just a soft chime, a locked gate, and a single message posted on every official channel. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Concord, effective immediately. The message spread like fire through dry grass. Species that had barely noticed Earth before now stared at their screens in disbelief. Withdrawal was not just rare, it was unheard of. Once a species joined the Concord, it stayed. The rules said so, the history book said so, but humanity, it seemed, had stopped caring about rules. On Mars, Kyle Briggs was elbow-deep in a cargo hauler's engine when the alert flashed on his wristband. He wiped grease from his brow and read the message twice. Then he laughed, a short, sharp sound that startled his dog, Rusty. "Well," he muttered, "guess we're on our own now." He didn't panic. He got to work. By noon, he'd gathered every spare shield coil, power regulator, and sensor array from his garage. By nightfall, he'd wired them into a crude but functional defense rig for his neighbor's freighter. Others did the same. Across the red plains of Mars, in dome cities and underground tunnels, humans began turning civilian tools into shields, scanners into early warning systems, mining drones into lookouts. No orders came from Earth, none were needed. They knew what to do. On the frontier colony of New Carthage, Lisa Monroe stood in front of her classroom, her students watching her with wide eyes. She had just finished reading the withdrawal notice aloud. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a boy in the back raised his hand. "Does this mean we're at war?" Lisa shook her head. "Not yet, but it means we can't count on anyone else to protect us." That evening, she walked to the town hall and posted a sign, "Community Defense Meeting, all adults welcome." By sunset, over 200 people filled the room. Farmers with laser trimmers, miners with reinforced exosuits, medics with field kits. They didn't talk about fighting. They talked about watching, warning, and watching each other's backs. Lisa, who had once taught poetry, now drew maps of patrol routes on a chalkboard. Back on Earth, President Elena Ruiz stood before the Unified Earth Assembly. The room was packed, silent. She didn't wear a uniform or a ceremonial robe, just a dark jacket and a tired look in her eyes. "We did not choose this path lightly," she said, "but peace cannot be bull.